This is a bonus episode of the Death to Tyrants podcast.
The crushing weight of the tyrant's passage had left nothing unmarked.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram wrath. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquids, and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
What's up, you guys? I'm stoked to bring you this bonus episode of the Death to Tyrants podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of a very rainy Austin, Texas today. This is not a regular bonus episode. What kind is it, you may ask?
It's a psychobilly freakout!
Yes, that sound can only mean one thing. We are in the presence of the Reverend Horton Heat. Jim Heath is on the show with us here today. I'm stoked to have him on here. We're going to get into his long musical journey, some pretty crazy stories that he's experienced along the ways, touring worldwide, basically. And then we get into some politics. I mean, this is a political podcast, and our man Jim Heath, the Reverend Horton Heat, likes himself some political discussion. And let me tell you how this came about. Obviously, we're at a crazy moment right now with this COVID-19 stuff. And obviously now, most of us are in this quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. Lots of businesses are shut. Before we got to this part of the COVID-19 predicament, Jim, he was on tour, of course, like he is quite a bit. He saw a show or two being canceled. Now, again, this is before we were in nationwide, as worldwide lockdown, if that's what you want to call it. And so he saw a show or two being canceled and wanted to let his fans know that, hey, if there are show cancellations in your town, it's beyond my control. As far as I can control, I want to keep playing. Not for himself, but for the guys in his band and his crew, the guitar techs, sound guys, roadies, etc., etc. Jim treats these guys like they're his family. So he let everyone know that on Facebook. And boy, there were some really, really terrible people that said just things that were absurd, really, spewing venomous hate at the Reverend Horton Heat in their comment section, which, you know, it's Facebook. Everyone likes to pretend that they know they're the end-all, be-all about every topic that gets discussed, and they know everything. So they started attacking, saying, you know, this stuff that was ridiculous. And those of us that know him and know what a kind-hearted person he is, it was hard to see some of these things. Of course, it's by people that don't know him. And so I sent him a text saying, basically offering my support and saying sorry that so many idiots are saying these terrible things about you, etc., etc. Well, we got to going back and forth through text, and lo and behold, he's here on the show today. I said, look, I got a platform if you want to vent. But it's not just here to vent. It's a very fun discussion. Like I said, we talk about his music, the history of music, the tough times he's experienced coming up, and the fact that, yeah, he does want to keep playing for his guys. Now, again, this is before we were basically all locked down, so we realized that, you know, it's changed over the last several weeks. It's hard to imagine, isn't it, just a few weeks ago that bands were playing shows, restaurants were open, and yeah, now look where we're at. So let me waste your time no further. For those of you that aren't familiar with the Reverend Horton Heat, let me tell you real quick about him. I'll give you his little Wikipedia bio. The Reverend Horton Heat is the stage name of American musician Jim Heath, as well as the name of his Dallas, Texas-based psychobilly trio. Heath is a singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Magazine reviewer once called him the Godfather of modern rockabilly and psychobilly. His group formed in 1986, playing its first gigs in Dallas's Deep Ellum neighborhood. The band describes itself as rock and roll that's influenced by 50s rockabilly, punk, country, surf, and jazz standards. The band mixes, obviously, country, surf, punk, big band, swing, and rockabilly into loud, energetic songs with often humorous lyrics. Video games, cartoons, and commercials have used the band's songs, giving the Reverend Horton Heat some mainstream exposure. Well, he's going to get some libertarian podcast exposure here today. With me on the show, I'm stoked to have
It's a psychobilly freakout.
the Reverend Horton Heat. Jim Heath, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well, man.
Good.
Well, I guess we'll jump right into this thing here.
Okay.
Probably most of the people listening know who you are. You've been doing your thing for a long time. And I know it's...
Wow, that's cool.
Well, a decent long... I mean, I used to go see you just fresh out of high school here in Austin at Liberty Lunch multiple times, a place that's not even there anymore.
Yeah.
I know it's cheesy to start with this, tell us about yourself, but your story's cool. I know at some point you were a sound guy early on, and now you're known all over the world. And I think actually the humble beginnings, that's a very valid point of your story. So can we talk about how you got started and how basically you've become one of the biggest names in psychobilly and rockabilly music?
Well, you know, the sound guy thing, it just kind of was out of desperation. You know, I'm motivated a lot by desperation and fear. But I was, I had been, my first band that made money and traveled, we were still in high school. And so I kind of learned that at that age that I was good enough to do it. But so then I went to college, and that was a real buzzkill. I did not like the University of Texas very much, but so I found a band that was touring and playing shows. And back in those days, bands, the clubs didn't have PA systems, and a lot of the bands that toured around had to bring their own PA system and lights. And so we had this band, we had to have our own PA. And so we had a PA system and we had lights and all that. And took us 4 hours to set up. But anyway, long story short, the band started like dwindling away. People were quitting. You know, next thing I know, I mean, I married, my first wife was one of the singers in that band. And we had the PA system, and then eventually it just all, that band fell apart. And so I decided to make ends meet. I was renting out this PA system. And so that's how I started running sound and loading in and working for other people and all that kind of thing. And it was a real great lesson, because for one thing, a lot of musicians did not go through a phase where they had to be the loaders and the road crew guys like I did. And so I know what those guys go through, so I don't take them for granted. And so, sadly, I think a lot of musicians don't really pay enough respect to the road crew sound guys and stuff. But
yeah, no doubt. And it says on your wiki page that at some point you went to see the Cramps, and that's kind of what gave you the idea that, like, wait a second, all this rockabilly stuff that I know can have some kind of cross with the punk rock stuff I know. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it was. I was in rock bands, but my first band was a 50s band, and then I was in rock bands, but I was really more of a blues guy, and I was a player. And so I loved a lot of the punk rock, but some of it was kind of like, well, these guys they just play a bunch of power chords all over the place. And, but I was developing a liking for that in rock and roll. And so I went to see a show that I thought was a punk rock show, and it was the Cramps. And it was, in fact, a punk rock show, because the crowd was a punk rock crowd. Anyway, I didn't know what they were about at all. And the next thing I know, they're playing Surfin' Bird and The Way I Walk by Jack Scott. And they're playing these twangy guitar type riffs. And it was some kind of early 60s garage band mix. And I was thinking to myself, this is 50s music. This and so for me, the connection to the old style, vintage style guitar that I kind of was doing when I was a kid, it kind of made me realize that it was working in a punk rock environment. And so, I got this, and right around the same time, I saw the band The Blasters, and The Blasters played the Hot Club in Dallas, which was the punk rock club in Dallas. And so it all kind of to me, it was like, it was my way to get into the punk rock and alternative scene, as opposed, because it was something that was really hard for a lot of guys to take. I mean, in the 70s, when my first bands, it was all rock, rock stuff. And I was in rock bands I was in all sorts of types of bands, but anyway, that's kind of, it kind of made me realize. And, I talked to the Cramps. I talked to, Lux and Ivy about that gig years later, because we got to open up for them on a whole American tour, and they remembered the gig because, well, I remember it too, because there was a rumble in the parking lot between the metal guys and the punk rock people.
Oh, wow.
And the punk rock people were not armed with knives and guns like the metal guys were. So it wasn't going to end well, and the cops showed up and probably prevented somebody from getting killed.
Yeah.
So anyway, the cops then the Ivy remembered it. She goes, "Oh yeah, the cops ran us out of town. They followed us to the border of Dallas."
I'll be. Wow. It's funny to think about kind of a big tough guy, macho environment fight when you're watching Lux Interior, who much of the time was dressed in like latex pants and high heels often. It seems like a strange.
Well, part of the reason was, like I was talking about the Hot Club. This gig was at a metal bar, a rock club.
Oh, okay.
It was a big rock club, and so that was probably what the problem was in that respect, because, you bring all these punk rock people into these heavy metal dudes club, and they didn't like it, and it was
Right.
a big mess, but. Yeah.
So when around did you start playing, as far as touring music goes, when you were touring around, basically kind of the sound you have now? When was the first incarnation of that?
Well, the first thing of Reverend Horton Heat, what happened is that in what I call the great rockabilly scare of 1983, I was in a really cool band called Teddy and the Tall Tops in Dallas, and eventually Ted moved to Austin and had a great career with that band down in Austin. But I was the first guitar player in the band, and it was Ted's a marvelous resource for music. He's just incredible. Even as a kid, he was a great record collector. He was from Corpus, where I grew up too. So so we did a bunch of really cool but obscure rockabilly covers, and by people like Al Ferrier, and some of the more obscure stuff by people, Conway Twitty was a rockabilly guy early on, and anyway, so the bass player in that incarnation of Teddy and the Tall Tops was a guy named Homer Henderson, also known as Phil Benison, and Phil has a great knowledge of vintage records and rockabilly, and so between him and Ted, that's when I really got exposed to the more, let's say, obscure rockabillys, and I realized that era of music had hundreds of labels with thousands of artists, and more than just the run of the mill stuff. But anyway, that was all good, but it was like I've said, it was a cover band, and so that's a whole other thing I could talk about. But back then you had to have your own songs to have credibility. But no clubs would let you play if you had your own songs. So every band in the 70s knew that you could be a cover band and make money, but you would never get a record deal. because back then the records, and so there were very few bands that could write their own songs and play gigs. In fact, there were really only like about 3 bands on our circuit in Texas that played a lot of, and mainly their own songs that they had written. So that's what I aspired to. I wanted to write my own songs. And so I was not a singer. I was a guitar player. And I started writing songs, and I figured out it was really difficult to have somebody, hey, come sing my songs. No, I'm not. I'm not going to come sing your song. So I realized that I was going to have to sing them myself. So I was working at a place called Theater Gallery in Dallas and doing sound, and I ended up living there after my first marriage. My marriage broke up, and I moved into this warehouse called Theater Gallery, and I would set up PAs for bands and whatnot, and I would go play gigs with other bands and whatnot, and I also had a job working in the accounting department for several different insurance companies, and it's all crazy. I had 3 jobs basically, but the guy that owned the club heard me playing and singing, and he said, "Hey, I'm opening up a new bar. Your music would be perfect for my new bar I'm opening up. So 2 weeks from Thursday, I want you to play my bar on Thursday night." 2 weeks. And so I said, okay. And his name was Russell Hobbs, and the bar was called the Prophet Bar. And so I showed up in the afternoon to set up and sound check. And while I was there, he came up on stage and he said, your stage name is going to be Reverend Horton Heat. Okay. I said, what? I said, no, I know. But I said, no, you're giving me a stage name? That's a little more than I bargained for anyway. So I played my first set, and there was actually people there. There's probably about 40 people in this club. And they were clapping. And at the end of my first set, they all were coming up saying, "Hey, Reverend, that was great." And I was going, what is happening here? These people are calling me Reverend. What I didn't know is he had already listed it in the papers and made flyers as Reverend Horton Heat. And I didn't see that. But I was so desperate at the time that I ran with it. I had a crowd of people, so I was grateful to have a gig, and I was playing mainly my own. So I threw in a bunch of kind of rockabilly standards as well. You know, I'd throw in Baby Let's Play House and Mystery Train and maybe Johnny Burnett and maybe that kind of thing. Johnny Cash and that kind of thing in there in between my own songs. And so I had a career, and so I was grateful to have it, and it turned into way more than I thought it would.
Yeah, I bet going from, can you play this other place I'm opening in 2 weeks to, hey, you're the Reverend Horton Heat and people want to see you play again.
Right.
How did that, so then the transition to getting into Sub Pop, you got signed by Sub Pop Records, and a lot of people, younger people especially now, might not even realize at the time that wasn't just what seemed to me like a minor label. It had Nirvana and that whole grunge thing from Seattle, Mudhoney, Soundgarden. How did it happen that a band that sounded like you guys becomes attached to Sub Pop?
Well, we all, even though it was kind of crazy, I'm desperate. I'm motivated by desperation, and fear. Uh-huh. But we were so desperate that what we would do, and if at the end of the day, these clubs, Theater Gallery, it was kind of an alternative, sometimes punk, some alternative grunge already. So we would play everything. I mean, we would play a metal bar one night, a country bar the next night, a punk rock club the next night, and a blues bar the next night. And then the way we did it is we would basically play our songs, but just modify our set list. So if it was the punk rock place, we'd play a lot of our more faster songs, all squeezed together. If it was a country place, we'd play more of our slower country stuff. And if it was a metal, that's what we did, the blues thing. Okay, we'd do that. But over time, we felt like, since it was our own music, that when we got out there and started touring, the clubs that were the most willing to give us a chance were the alternative and the punk rock clubs. And so we were doing that and playing these wild rock and roll shows in these punk rock places all over America. But we still did the other stuff too. But so we were already playing the same clubs that Nirvana and Soundgarden and all that they were playing. And so when we got up to Seattle and we started making inroads into that market, then the sub pop guys kind of saw us. But it is kind of a funny story. I mean, it's kind of long, but what happened is we booked a tour of the West Coast, and we played a great rockabilly club called the Blue Saloon in North Hollywood. And that was when we first got exposed to Big Sandy and that scene. But we were also playing the punk rock places in Hollywood. But anyway, our first trip out there, a guy told us he had some gigs for us in Seattle. So I blocked off a week. And by the time we got up to Portland, this guy wasn't even answering his phone. So we had a week off, and we decided to go to Seattle anyway. So we went to Seattle, and I had a card files. I had everybody's name in a little card file. You know, this was before we traveled around us. We didn't, nobody had cell phones. You know? So I looked at the guy's card. I said, hey, look, we have his address. Let's go to his apartment. So we went to some apartment in Seattle and knocked on the door. And this big redheaded dude answered the door and looked down at us, and we said, hey, you know, and then he said, no, he's not here. He said, he left owing us and just about everybody else in Seattle money. If you know where he is, we'd like to know too. And we said, can we stay here?
Oh, wow.
And he did. They let us stay there. And so we crashed on their floor, and he made some phone calls. The guy's name is Dean. He used to be a bartender he was in a great band called Cat Butt that was on Sub Pop. But he ended up moving to Austin, and he was at a club called Emo's. He was a bartender there for a long time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But anyway, Dean was a cool guy, and he was somewhat connected. So he came in there on about the third day, and he goes, look, he said, they can't pay you any money, but there's this music festival or a big showcase of a bunch of bands on Saturday night, and they think it's going to end early. And they said, if it ends early and you guys are there, they're going to throw you guys up and let you finish out the night. And we said, sweet, that's really cool. You know, who cares? We're not going to make any money the way we are now. At least we'll get, and it was even better than that. It ended early. It was a great crowd. And it was grunge rock people, basically, but they loved us, and we were winning them over. Everyone was smiling. It was killer. But then all of a sudden, as we were playing, nobody was smiling. All of a sudden, everybody had this shocked look on their face, and they looked over at, they were all looking at Jimbo. And I looked over there, and he had broken a bass on the big upright bass. He'd broken a string on it, and he was still slapping the bass on his remaining strings. But as he was slapping, there was blood going everywhere.
Wow.
I mean, blood was pooling on the floor. He was covered in blood. There were these girls right in front of him that had blood splatter on their face. It was wild. And we were playing the song Psychobilly Freakout, and that's so it has breaks. And so I decided, okay, I started playing the licks to get us into the break. So I played, you know, about two or four bars is all I played. It's a fast song. And we hit the break, and the whole crowd went silent. And I looked over there, and what had happened is Jimbo had broken a string, and I didn't know this. But to get it out of his way, I guess he decided to just rip it off with his bare hands. Oof. And it gashed his finger down to the bone. I mean, it was just a bloody pulp, bloody thing on it. It was terrible. And he was just bleeding profusely. And I went over there and I said, man, I said, are you okay? And he completely ignored me. The whole crowd is dead silent at this point, with their jaws on the floor. He picks up his bass and walks right in front of me, doesn't say a word to me, and gets up in the brightest light in the center of the stage. And he planted the bass like it was a flag on, like he was planting a flag on the North Pole. He took it and planted it. Then he held up his hand in the air, and his whole arm was just glistening red blood in the light and dripping off his elbow. And I'm standing back there going, where's he going with this? You know? And then he takes his hand and he makes a cross in blood on his face, across his eyes and down the middle of his face. He makes a cross.
Wow.
And I'm going, what the heck's going on? And he looks back at me and he just said, go.
Nice.
And I knew what he meant. So I went up to the microphone. I said, it's a psychobilly freakout. And we kept playing and blood was going everywhere. And the people went wild. I mean, it was quite a scene. We really won over the crowd. But what we found out later is that behind the two girls with the blood splatter stain on their face, right behind them were the two owners of Sub Pop Records. And we got a record deal off that gig.
I'll be damned. Wow.
So,
thanks to Jimbo. Well, not only the talent and the songwriting and the musicianship that you guys all had, but thanks to Jimbo's unplanned bloody massacre moment.
He's gung-ho. Jimbo is gung-ho. But, you know, that's the one reason why we're here is because I'm gung-ho too, but it was very difficult to find musicians who, hey, let's get in the van and drive to the West Coast for no money.
Right.
That's like, no. You know, people aren't willing to, you know, do that. And that's, that's kind of why we're here. And so, you know, to this day, you know, Jimbo's really gung-ho about doing gigs, and you know, that's just the way we are. So
well, that's actually a good segue, because some of the stuff I want to ask you about involves you guys being gung-ho to push forward and do gigs. And I want to ask you about, there was a post on Facebook basically that you guys made about not wanting to quit playing gigs. It was kind of when this COVID stuff was just rearing its head, especially within the media. Myself, I had no idea, I'm sure you guys didn't either, that things were going to get so clamped down. But you made a post about not wanting to quit playing gigs and push forward and kind of move through this. For those who didn't see it, can you talk about that and kind of the sentiment that you had in mind?
Well, yeah, I mean, a couple of things. For one thing, you know, you've got all of these rock stars virtue signaling, you know, and saying, you know, for the health of my fans, I'm going to cancel the tour. Well, the thing about me, and I won't say who, but one of my crew guys, before all this started, when that all started happening, he called me like virtually in tears because he could see all the bands canceling, and he said, "Man, I'm getting married. I got to work. Or what are you gonna do?" And I told him, I said, "Man, I'm not going to cancel any gigs." I said, you know, if they cancel, then that's one thing. But, you know, my crew guys were panicked, and it just made me think about it. You know, like Madonna. Madonna says, "I'm going to cancel all my whole tour because of this awful disease, and I want to help people." It's like, well, you haven't really thought much about your crew and about the hundreds, if not thousands of people that are going to be out of work that you canceled this, you know. But she's just trying to virtue signal. Yes. She doesn't care about the economic repercussions to the underlings, the little people underneath her.
Right.
You know, she's just trying to, you know, virtue signal and show how caring she is, you know, whatever. And so I saw some rock stars and some bands doing that. I'm thinking, good Lord, they're going to, them canceling gigs to make the, you know, they might be able to handle the the economic downturn, but their roadies won't, and their road crew won't. And so my guys have, several of them have children that are hungry, that have children that are trying to fight to pay for college for their children. They're having to fight to pay for, life goes on, and so I made a post saying that I wasn't going to cancel. And by the way, my band and crew have a right to assembly too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not exactly sure what exactly I said, but it caused a giant but the funny thing is it caused a giant shitstorm on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was overwhelmingly negative comments and super mean comments,
Mm-hmm.
without getting into all that, a bunch of stupid people saying mean stuff. And what was really on is I made basically the same post on Instagram, and there was zero negative.
Wow.
And I think, isn't that odd? I mean, it's really odd, the difference between Instagram and Facebook. Now, on Facebook and on Instagram, I think the one that I might have gotten more later that I didn't see, I don't know. But the one down the page that was negative was like, on Reverend, I think I have to disagree with you on this one.
Right.
And so, hey, that's fine.
Right.
If you want to, I'm like going, okay, cool. That's how you disagree. You don't haul off and call somebody a bunch of awful names and that kind of thing. But that gets me off into something that I will do my part as an American, concerned American, to help with the coronavirus. This is a pandemic that is obviously affecting everybody, but at some point, Buck, we have to realize that our forefathers fought and died brutal deaths to protect our First Amendment right to freedom of speech and the right to assemble.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will do my part for now, but at some point we have to realize that the government doesn't give the right to assemble to us.
That's right.
The Bill of Rights states that they can't take it away. It's an inalienable right.
Right.
We had that right already before there was a U.S. government, is what the Bill of Rights basically is saying.
Right.
And so if what I think is what's kind of crazy is that even conservative pundits who are, I don't hear any of them talking about the right to assembly either. I mean, no, it's like, oh, that's what we got to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got to do this. And it's like, well, I don't know. I'll do my share. I'm going to do my part for a while, and gladly, because I this is something that is in modern history we haven't had to face, and I'll do my share. But I just hope that people realize that at some point we have to stand up for our right to assembly, and all these people that, love music and love concerts and love art and comedy and restaurants and bars and all that, they're going to have to stop and think, hey, you're going to let the government tell you can't do that anymore?
Right.
I mean, I'm kind of shocked that there's not more being said about it, but, so, and people say, well, people are going to die. It's like, well, I don't want people to die. So, that's why I'm doing my part. I do not want people to die, but I will say this. I would rather die of the coronavirus than to give up my right to assembly.
Or right to...
A lot of better men and women have died. Better men and women than me.
Right.
Have died for us to have the right to have these concerts. and without the government saying, oh, you can have a concert. No, but you can't have a concert. So at some point, it's crazy. It's crazy. I just hope that people are going to do the right thing, but also while thinking about not giving up their their rights.
Sometimes you just got to laugh in the face of some of this. I saw a meme this morning that had a picture of the founders basically writing the Bill of Rights and signing the Constitution, and one of them stood up like he objected and said, "Unless there's a virus." So yeah. It's like, I think,
unless there was a virus,
right?
Well, stop and think about it in another term. If let's go back to World War II when we lost 400,000 soldiers in World War II. I mean, fighting Hitler and fighting the Japanese. And what if we had a virus during that? Would they say, oh, okay, everybody, we're going to lose a lot of people? I tell you what, a lot of elderly people back then would say, hey, forget it.
Yeah.
Go to work.
Yes.
Go to work. If we die, if we lose 200,000 people here, then so be it. We got to fight. We got to beat Hitler. We're going to lose everything.
Right.
You know, and so, there's, I don't know. I mean, I just hope people I just wish people would be more respectful about history and how we got here. We got here because a lot of people died for our First Amendment rights and our Bill of Rights, all of them, not just the first.
I think, and maybe this is a generalization or a stereotype. From what I saw, I'm guessing a lot of the people that were attacking you online aren't totally familiar with history or certainly the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or any rights theory that might exist before the Constitution. It seemed more like just the outrage mob. It's the hip thing to do is to yell at everyone, stay inside, or you're an asshole, basically. I want to say something real quick and talk about some of the comments that I saw. You and I have several mutual friends. Before I actually ever met you, one of them, actually multiple, but one specifically raved about what a genuinely great person that you are and how you very much take care of your guys and you treat your close friends like family. You're treating this person's family like they're your family. And I saw that sentiment in your post, basically talking about your crew and your guys like that they need to work. And all of a sudden I start seeing these people that don't know you at all saying terrible things like you mentioned about you in the comments. And it wasn't simply, hey, Rev, stay safe during this COVID. I don't know, it could get worse. Maybe you shouldn't play shows. I think I disagree with you on this. It was nothing sensible, but straight up, hateful stuff and insults. And my friend said, our mutual friend said, I saw people that I know personally that kind of consider themselves tolerant of everything and so open-minded, going on there and basically cursing out the Rev like he was a piece of garbage. And it kind of showed a lot of these people aren't tolerant at all. Did you notice some of that?
Yeah. It's a hard time. It's a hard time. Yeah, because people seem to me that they're saying, we're not going to let you talk because you're intolerant.
Yeah. Yeah. The irony.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, but, and it makes me wonder a lot of things, I mean, in 1962, they marched in Berkeley for the right of freedom of speech. And so a lot of people were saying, are they really marching for freedom of speech, or are they really marching because they want to get their communist agenda into the college? And now, almost 60 years later, in Berkeley, if you're somebody even as benign as somebody like Dennis Prager.
Yes.
Dennis Prager is just a sweet, sweet old guy. if he wants to give a speech, they just burn cars, they break windows, they attack the people that want to go hear him talk.
Yeah.
And so, it's a weird time, I mean, so I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like, it just feels like that there's a lot of intolerance out there in the name of tolerance.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's got to be the first generation that's actually actively holding marches against freedom of speech at this point.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Uh,
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where we're going with all this, but.
Have you, I don't know, again, going over some of the comments, I was just disheartened. And that happens much of the time, but it was to someone yourself that I respect a lot. And I know for a fact is a genuinely sweet person. And it was hard to see some of these things. Do you think there's I don't know, is there an aspect of the rock and roll audience that has softened? Because it used to seem to me like, hey, this is rock and roll, F the system. There's a rebellious nature in it. You're not just going to be sheep that follow along with whatever fear-mongering government program is trying to push you to. Or maybe is it just the vocal minority that wants to pretend to be the outraged mob? Where do you see all of that?
Oh, yeah. Well, no, it's crazy. It's kind of like a lot of these musicians, the way they're being rebellious is basically being mouthpieces for the New World Order bankers that wish to enslave them.
Yes.
And so, they're, they'll get out there and they'll say, we hate the bankers and the bankers, but what about the Federal Reserve? Oh, that's just hunky-dory.
I've noticed that. Amen. Yes, you're speaking my language. Bernie and his supporters keep saying, I can't believe we're going to bail out of these big banks. These big banks are the enemy. And they never say a word about the Federal Reserve.
That's right. The biggest bank in the world.
That's right. That's not federal by any means. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are, Buck, I think a lot of people are just not informed. I think if they really knew more about it, they're just kind of, and then I think one thing too that's happened a lot, and that goes back to what we were just talking about, intolerance and stuff, is that a lot of these people are only into politics because of Facebook and social media and Twitter. Before that, they were like a lot of these artistic people, all they thought about basically was, how can I take a cooler picture, or how can I write a better song? How can I be what kind of, glass am I going to blow, and that's all great, but then now this Facebook and Twitter has forced them into throwing out their opinions about politics, and they don't know what it's like to lose a heartbreaking election. They're too young.
Yes.
They don't know what it's like to get their asses kicked politically. And once that happens, then they don't know how to handle it, So it's like, oh my God, Trump is like he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi. It's like, look, I think all politicians are kind of like people that are, they're like this really terrible necessary evil, and none of them are perfect. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are okay people, I know, but at the end of the day, we can't let those people control us. And so I think at the end of the day, a lot of these people, they just don't realize that they're newbies to politics, and they don't really understand. They don't know the history of stuff. That's
that's extremely that's clear. I've seen people. You've seen this, of course, and this almost sounds so commonplace to say, but I've seen people saying Trump is the worst president of all time, clearly showing you don't know history. FDR literally put Japanese Americans in concentration camps. That's historical fact. And we can go down the line. There were presidents that owned actual slaves. So in this day and age, it's going to be tough kind of to top those atrocities, don't you see?
Yeah, no, I totally understand, and that it's like, and a lot of people say a lot of stuff on Facebook, and we could debate that stuff, but they can't debate because they're just, well, Trump's a Nazi.
Right.
It's like, well, there, and look, whether you like him or not, I've got a lot of wonderful family members and friends that are Democrats who, don't like Trump. But when you get down to the point of just hating somebody so much because they're, and the funny thing is that I can almost prove that, like they say, Trump's a Nazi racist. It's like, you don't really believe that. And yes, I do. Well, why would you want to turn your guns over to a Nazi racist?
Right. And why would you want him now to nationalize various industries and make everyone stay in their homes?
Yeah, they're following. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy, So, look, I watch this stuff every day, and I don't agree. I think for myself. So, let's go to a place that Trump is I really don't like about him. If to please those people, if you hate Trump, listen up. He's telling people that we can't shake hands anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And listen, that's not happening with me. Yeah, and another thing too, and everybody, well, we're just not going to shake hands anymore. It's like, oh, really? And then another thing too is herd immunity is built up by shaking hands, by the way. So
excellent point. Yeah.
So anyway, that, I shake hands with and hug people for a living. Basically, that's part of what my job description is. And it makes me feel good, and it makes the people that I shake hands with feel good. And that's what I do. I love people, and that's why I do what I do. And so this is a dark time for me when it looks like there's a chance that they may outlaw concerts altogether for a year. What are they going to do? I mean, I've got some gigs booked. I've got promoters, and the promoters, I don't know what they're going to do either. I mean, it's not just me wanting to play gigs. It's promoters, it's the bartenders and waitresses, it's the club owner, it's the agents, it's my road crew, and it's the loaders. I don't know how they're going to just shut down a whole economy, this part of the economy, but
did you during this time where people were, spewing hate towards you on Facebook, did you have friends reach out to you with messages of support and love?
Yes, and I don't want to say who.
Okay.
But I had one music legend. I had a couple of music legends send me text messages saying, thank you for that post. Thank you for saying that.
Nice.
I had one famous TV personality comedian text message me and say, thank you for making that post. This is crazy. So, I had a lot of people. And then I had a lot of younger bands. The thing about me, I've been doing this a long time. I could probably afford to take 6 months off. It might be kind of hard. I'd probably, by the end of the 6 months, I'd probably be close to the point of having to sell my house and move into an apartment or something. But I could probably do it. But these young bands, my crew, a couple of my other guys in my band, there's no way they can do that. It's going to destroy their dream of being a musician as a career. Mm-hmm. And so that's one reason why I felt compelled to make that post, is because, yeah, sure, Madonna right. Can take 10 years off. She can afford that. But her crew that she doesn't give a crap about, no, they can't.
Right.
And also the other people that are affected. So, I'm really worried right now because the virus can kill 200,000 people is what they're saying now. But shutting down an economy, Buck, there's a chance that could kill 1 million people.
Yes, right. Right.
You just shut down an economy, people are going to it's going to cause massive civil unrest if they can't get food.
Yep.
And I don't know. I hope that that's not what's about to happen, but you know.
Do you,
But
you kind of touched upon it in this, and maybe you've answered my question, but I'll ask it directly. Is there anything you fear that could permanently be changed as far as playing live music to crowds goes once this kind of turns and we're on the other side of it?
yes, no, I'm completely scared. I'm completely afraid. You know, and everybody says, "Oh, that'll come back," but at the same time, you've got government. Government is here to take care of us and to make sure we don't make the wrong decisions. Well, if the government is shutting down shows, at what government official is going to go, "Hey, it's okay to have shows now. It's okay to have concerts. Go ahead, knock yourselves out." If they think that that decision could cost 100,000 deaths,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to do it. We're going to have to fight the government to have concerts again. That's what I feel. They're not going to do it. Because they're too afraid to be the guy. I'm the guy that said Live Nation could have Coachella. They could have Coachella. I'm the guy
Right.
that, that said that they could go ahead and have Viva Las Vegas and what have you.
Yeah.
And it caused 1 million deaths. Oh, no, I'm not going to say that. So my fear is that when you're controlled by government, they're not going to just go ahead and give us the right to assembly straight away back. This thing could really end my career the way I know it forever. It's not a pause. I'm hoping that it is just a pause.
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping that I can get back into playing gigs in June, July, and August. But it's not looking good. I mean.
Right.
So that's why the way I am, the way I was raised and taught in school, not just by my parents but by teachers too, is that, those rights are important things. That's why we have the highest standard of living in the world. We've had the highest standard of living in the world for a very, very long time, and people are spoiled.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't stop and think that, freedom of speech and the right to be able to defend yourself and the right to privacy and the right to a fair and speedy trial, a jury of your peers. All of this stuff was really well thought out, and it's why we have the highest standard of living in the world, and so, if they want to take freedom of speech away, and that's another thing too. The freedom of speech. They're shadow banning people
Yes.
like me if I make a post if I just post a news article off Zero Hedge.
Uh-huh.
They shadow ban it. No, you can't post that. And so if they're going to shut down freedom of speech, telling people how dangerous this virus is, and then they shut us down on the back end too of our right to assembly, then there was a great post on Zero Hedge, a very well piece of scientific journalism written about the scientist. They even put his picture and name in there, that created the coronavirus. He studied coronavirus. It's his life work. He works at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and it's all about his journey into studying the coronavirus and bats, and bats, how bats, for some reason, won't get sick from the coronavirus, but they will transmit it to other people and animals and what have you, but they don't get it themselves. And so studying all this stuff, and then it even had it listed, like, this Wuhan Institute of Virology had a help wanted ad about scientists. Have you ever know anything about studying bats and the immunity of bats? And have you studied viruses and coronaviruses? We need people to come help us figure this out. Well, one of the things was, have you ever studied diarrhea in conjuncture with coronavirus? And without getting too long-winded about all this article, but I read this article, I was like going, oh my Lord, if they're studying diarrhea from the coronavirus, They're not studying on how to get rid of diarrhea when you get the coronavirus. Why would they do that?
Right.
What they're studying is how to make diarrhea a bigger part of the coronavirus.
Right.
It's a weapon. So anyway, this article got posted on Zero Hedge, and because of that article, Zero Hedge got permanently banned off Twitter.
That's right. I saw that. Yeah.
So they're canceling my freedom of speech to read an article like this or have access to articles like this, canceling Zero Hedge's First Amendment freedom of speech. And then on the back, so we don't know how bad this virus really is, which it probably is a man-made bioweapon.
Mm-hmm.
But they're perfectly willing to, then we got to give up our right to assembly part of the First Amendment. It's just like at every point we're losing our First Amendment rights, and nobody sees any of that.
Yes.
You know, if you're so smart that you think it's okay for a private company to, well, they're a private company.
Yes.
They're a private company. They have the right to ban you if they want to. It's like, okay, well, does ExxonMobil have the right to go if a rancher wants to frack a well on his property? Does ExxonMobil have the right to go out there and do that?
Or how
they're a private company.
The one that always gets, I find it hilarious when leftists use they're a private company line because they don't believe in private property to begin with. So I say, okay, so then what if a Jewish baker owned a bakery? Should he be forced to bake a Nazi cake? No, he's a private company. Okay, got it. What if a Christian baker owned a bakery? Should he be, if a customer came in that was gay and wanted to do a gay wedding cake, does he have to do it? Yes. A lot of leftists would say, wait a sec, he's a private company. He didn't have to do what he didn't have to, right? And then all of a sudden the kind of argument and they falls apart and you lose them.
I think at every turn, I think just about all of these issues are not about the issue themselves.
Right.
Climate change, that issue is about implementing a one world government.
Most of these issues are about control.
A socialist one world government.
Right.
You know, and because there's a lot of the 30,000 climate scientists and weather people, and 9,000 of them were PhDs, signed a petition saying that climate change is not something that is being, if man is having any contribution to it at all, it's so minuscule that it's not worth even trying to do anything about. Those are scientists, you know, so yeah, I don't know. I'm getting off into these other issues, but let me just say something here.
Yes, sir.
I hope I die of the coronavirus before I see one of my leftist friends, communist leftist friends, lose their right to freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a lot of people that don't agree with that speech gave their lives and died for them to have the right to if you're a communist, if you're a socialist, I do not want you to be censored. I mean, it's just, this is nutty. This is nutty. We're giving up our freedom of speech, and people are just totally happy with it.
Yeah. A great analogy I heard recently was that the Bill of Rights wasn't necessarily a sheet giving us rights. It's a checklist. And once you start checking them off and they're gone, you know that's when it's time for some type of revolution. It's basically saying, here's what you need to have. If you don't have the more of these that go away, that's when it's time for change.
Right. So I just hope people, I hope people have can become more tolerant, so they can understand that if you don't agree with somebody, you can't try to use the government or publishers to try to cancel their freedom of speech. It's not right. It's not right. That's not America.
Right. And I've often thought if there's a voice spouting stuff that you don't like, and you truly believe that that person's wrong, you want everyone to hear it. If someone wants to discuss communism, please do. Feel free to tell as many people as you want about that idea, because it's a failure of an idea. And I think the more people that hear about it, the actual facts about it, they'll realize that doesn't work. And same if some guy's over in the far right and he's got a white nationalist stance, go ahead, let him speak. And the more people that hear that will realize, wait a second, that guy's kind of a loony. I don't think
that's right. That's right. That's a great point, Buck. Great, because then you know where people stand.
Yes.
And so great point. I've thought about that too.
And driving people like that out of the free speech realm pushes it underground. And that's actually when a lot of these movements become more dangerous, and they're able to attract people that have issues and all kinds of stuff. So driving fringe elements underground is not a particularly good way to move forward.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let them speak.
That's right. And I think we need more tolerance. We need more tolerance. We have a lot of intolerant people. And
they
framing themselves as being tolerant
with the loudest voices, it seems like, and Facebook's just giving them their platform. And again, you or I aren't sitting here saying Facebook censor them, but they sure are on the attack, and they want you censored and me censored often.
That's right.
Let's segue real quick before we get out of here. We got to end on a light note.
Okay.
So I know I talked to you in Memphis. God, it seemed like I told Dale and Robert this the other day. It seemed like just a few short weeks ago, we were all having fun in Memphis, Tennessee at Hernando's, drinking and partying. And what a different world a few weeks makes. Geez. Yeah. I knew then that I think you said it was one of the longest tours you had done in quite some time, the one that you had been on. How is it, despite the fact that you'd prefer to be working, so helping your guys out, how is it all of a sudden being at home and like the record says, the new song, you've got a whole new life? How is that going now that you got all this time off?
Well, my family's close. We're doing okay. But I'm having to try to figure out this world of live streaming.
Okay.
So I'm not supposed to be here in my studio, but I'm by myself, so I drive here by myself. I don't have to interact, but yeah, it's a whole new life.
Yeah.
And it sucks. No, it's crazy. We were partying and having fun and being rebels only 3 weeks ago, and now we're sheltering in place. I really don't like that term, sheltering in place. It's really making me upset, but I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part like everybody. But my children are doing really well at homeschooling, and one of my children, she wants to be homeschooled so bad because she's a great ballerina, and she's this kid's so good. She wants to be homeschooled, but we tell her, no, you're not going to. We don't have time to homeschool you, But she's seeing it as her chance to prove that she can be homeschooled,
Right.
So
that's sweet,
So it's pretty. That's kind of funny, It's kind of cute, but no, I've been having to. I come down here to my little studio by myself and sit in here. I'm trying to set up a way to live stream, and me and Jimbo are going to try to live stream as we keep our social distancing.
Of course, 6 feet away, right?
Right. So, but the crazy, I don't know. But anyway, so, the live stream thing is going to be an interesting little deal. I mean, for me, it's fun to be in my studio. I like to be in my studio, and I've got a lot of cool gear and that I tinker and toy with, and so I'm in here doing that. And so there's no way I can be infecting people or people can be infecting me. So I'll just go out and get in my car and drive right back home. And so I am not just staying at home. I just, Buck, I don't know. I'm not a person that hunker down is not something that I'm very good at.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be doing something, but I'm doing my part. I'm trying to, we're, trying to respect people's wishes. And, the crazy thing about all this is that, when people tell me, wash your hands, this funny thing is that, every New Year's Eve, people make resolutions, me included. And so about 20 years ago, it was New Year's Eve again. And I had to make another New Year's resolution, of course. Okay, this year I'm going to quit smoking, or this year I'm going to work out, 150 times this year, whatever, and I never did it. Never did any of it, Oh, this year I'm going to get lean, or this year I'm going to learn a new language, whatever, And so finally I gave up. And so I said, okay, my New Year's resolution is that I'm going to wash my hands a little bit more. And I was always a person that would wash my hands after I went to the bathroom, and, and to be courteous, not only to be courteous for my own health and everybody else's health. And it's the only New Year's resolution that stuck. I never got the flu after that. I used to get sick all the time because I'm always shaking hands, always in big crowds.
Right.
And so before this thing hit, I am a person that washed my hands like 20 times a day.
Wow.
But now that this thing is hit, I'm washing my hands like 50 times a day.
You were ahead of your time already then.
So, but I mean, it's a kind of a courtesy thing, because after I play a gig, before I go out and start shaking a bunch of people's hands, I try to wash my hands. And if I can't, then I'd for sure wash my hands after I shake hands with a bunch of people. That's the way. But, I wasn't, if I go to the bathroom, I wash my hands. That's the way I've been for 25 years. I mean, for most of all my life is but anyway, long story short, I used to get sick all the time because I was out in crowds, and now I never get sick. I wash my hands all the time. And so now with this, I'm washing my hands like 50 times a day. So it's making me crazy. People, now be sure to wash your hands.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you're probably one of those gross people that didn't before.
Yes.
So you didn't wash your hands before this? And like, no, I'm talking about you. I'm telling you what to do. Well, no, I'm telling you what to do now.
Yes.
So it's just a whole authoritarian thing, Okay, everybody, shelter in place. Like, okay, even though it's actually called martial law, we'll call it sheltering in place if that's what you want to call
it.
But so, I'm going to shelter in place for a while, and I will do my part. But at some point, we got to have our rights back. But anyway, I'm going too long.
No worries. I was actually telling Brittany, my wife, that same thing. At some point, I mean, you can tell people, hey, you can't go to work if you're a non-essential job or whatever for a little bit. At some point, this is America, and not even for we have the rights aspect of it, but people have just a built-in love to go to work in this country. There's still some of that left, I think, a lot of that left, and people are just going to go, I'm going to work, and at some point, the will to go do stuff and live your life becomes greater than the fear of catching a virus. And I realize at this point, we're not sure how contagious this gets and who's been tested and who, once that the tests and that technology is implemented here in the next month, I just don't think the government's going to be able to keep a lot of people hunkered down in their homes anymore.
Yeah, I know. But what they'll do, which I think is that they're going to say, okay, everybody go to work except musicians. That's what's going to happen. And eventually people that want to go to concerts and people that want to play concerts, I predict that we're going to have to really, really fight for our right to have concerts again, because what politician is going to come out and say, okay, Go ahead and have that 10,000 person festival.
Yeah, sure.
But then again, too, I mean, if they're going to have football games, if they're going to have baseball games, I guess I don't know how this is going to work.
Yeah.
I got to kind of laugh to keep from crying because, but no, you're right, Buck. People want to go to work. People want to be with other people. People want to, like I said, I shake hands for a living. And so, Trump telling me, well, just if we, we might not be able to shake hands anymore. It's like, oh, ugh.
Uh-huh.
Then he becomes a big authoritarian telling us this.
Yeah.
I'm just against authoritarianism. I mean, our country was built on a respect for the rule of law, not a complete cowing down to any bureaucratic wish, and
yes.
So, but in Collin County where I live, it's kind of funny. You might have heard this or not, but the judge of Collin County came out and said, okay, everybody stay at home, shelter in place, except for only essential jobs. And then he said, but pretty much every job is essential.
Yeah.
It's a total mixed message. Nobody knows what to think about it. That's up where I live in Collin County, but in some ways he's right, but
yes,
this thing it's goofy. I mean, I understand that we all need to pitch in together to kill this virus, and I'm all for that, and I'm doing my part, and I hope everybody else does too. But I just wish that some people would be talking about, by the way, we're giving up our First Amendment right to make this happen.
Yeah.
So we got to be careful with what we tell people they can and can't do.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well put. Before we go then, go ahead in case there are tour dates down the road, tell my listeners where they can find your information online and your website, tour dates, etc.
Well, ReverendHortonHeat.com has our tour dates page that gets updated, and it looks like we're going to try to go back in June. See, we have to plan way far in advance. That's the thing about music. So we're planning on playing in June. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But we'll have to see. But it looks like we've got dates coming up in June, and so hopefully those will still hold. But it just kind of remains to be seen. I don't know what's going to happen as of now. But we're going to start trying to live stream, and me and Jimbo have tried. We're trying to do something a little bit different with live streaming. It's going to just be me and Jimbo. But we're going to try to do something a little bit different, and we'll see what happens, with all this, because every band is doing it now. So,
is that going to be on y'all's Facebook page, the Reverend Horton Heat Facebook page?
Well, we're going to start out trying to do it on a platform a website called Stage It, stageit.com. And we're just going to see how it goes. So, it's a whole new world. And so that's kind of what I've been having to do. My guys are scrambling, and Jimbo saying, well, man, how are we going to pay the bills? What are we going to do? And so we're basically forced into trying to go to this live streaming thing. But, it's going to be fun. We'll try to, and one thing I think will be good is that we'll be able to, have some fan interaction as we play. That's going to be kind of cool to get to talk to our fans, as long as none of them are mean people from Facebook.
Yeah, some of the trolls might want to visit you.
Yeah, they're gonna. Yeah, but no, it'll be fun, and we're looking forward to doing that. So, and hey, man, I appreciate what you're doing, and thanks, Buck.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thanks for being here on the podcast.
Sure.
We're friends. I'm a big fan, and this has been awesome, man. Thank you for being here on Death to Tyrants.
Well, thank you so much for doing it. Great podcast, and stay free and stay well.
All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed that chat with the Reverend Horton Heat. Jim, again, thank you, man. What a fun talk. I was honored to have him on the show. Real quick, I'll give you the stuff I always give you at the end of these episodes. Find me online at facebook.com/Death to Tyrants podcast. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. Let's see, I got a Patreon page if you'd like to donate to the show. Every penny I earn on there goes right back into this show, I can assure you that. Patreon.com/Death to Tyrants. And I got t-shirts, guys. I got some really cool Death to Tyrants t-shirts. You can find some postings on that on the Facebook page. And that's about all I got for you right now. I will talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoy this bonus episode. Stay safe.
You get split in fucking half, but I call him the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Death to Tyrants podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.